Today is April 27th, and that means the 2025 NFL Draft has passed. And boy, what a fun day it was! It was a great couple of days for the channel. Over 100,000 views, which is perfect. Almost 200 hours watched, which is great. Thank you all for who have viewed the content over the past couple of days. And we will be getting back to Brewers recaps. I've just been a particular shade of I don't give a F right now because they have not played well and they just can't beat even teams like the Cardinals. The Cardinals are really bad. Giants are good, but they struggle mightily. But then again, they always struggle against the Giants for whatever reason. But now, since the draft has passed, it means it's time for draft grades. Arbitrary draft grades for players that haven't even played a snap in the NFL or haven't even been to their mandatory mini camp or rookie mini camp yet. So I think it's unfair to assume that these players have any kind of grades, and as a result of that, I will not be giving them today. I'm going to go over every draft pick that the Packers made this year, and I will give you my feelings on if they were kind of reaches or not. But we won't know what grade these players get for another 5 years or so. So 5 years is a good time to let players develop, find out if they're still in the league, and by 5 years you'll know whether they are probably going to make the jump or they never will, or they were never actually going to. But let me know what you think down in the comments below, and let's get to it. Starting with our first pick for the Packers, the big surprise, although I would like to point out that I talked about the Packers making wide receiver a selection in the first round simply because they just haven't worked out. I don't think Jaden Reed and Dontavian Weeks are done from potentially showing what they can, but based on first year, Dontavian Wicks has made more of a transition in season 2 than Jaden Reed. I mean, Jaden Reed was a second round pick and he looked really good in the first year. Then the second year, he took a major downturn, while Dontavian Wicks definitely had a rough beginning of the year in 2024, but definitely went up as the year progressed. His drops went down steadily and suddenly, and now we have Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas, 5'11 wide receiver. So yes, he is a shorter, but he's really good at high pointing the ball. He's good in space. He's a good route runner, and he has some speed. Now, his 40 time is deceptive because while yes, he was the fastest wide receiver in the draft, he's not particularly built on speed, but he can move fast, he can cover the field fast, and while he's not built like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a fair comparison. Now, I'm not saying that Matthew Golden is destined to be a over 1,500 yard wide receiver with several touchdowns and just, you can literally throw him anywhere in the field and he'll catch it. I'm not saying that at all, but I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a fair comp. Like I said, he's not as beefy as Amon-Ra, but he can run every route. He can make the moves. He's really quick in his feet and good in space. Now, the thing against him is his height. Like I said, he's 5'11". He had a history of getting injured at Texas throughout his football career, and he's just going to have to add mass. He's going to have to add a little mass. He had the tendency when runs after the catch that he would get taken down right away. So definitely with training, he can build himself up and be a better version of himself. Now, it would be nice for him to build up like Amon-Ra St. Brown to get that kind of build. Not necessarily necessary, just he needs to be able to take some of the hits that he's going to take in the NFL. I would like to point out that he was also a really good kick returner, so the Packers could have another kick returner to add to the repertoire. We've already seen what Jaden Reed can do. We've already seen what Keyshawn Nixon can do. Matthew Golden could be an ideal kick returner to throw in there on both the kick and the punt. And I think he'll be a really good addition to the Packers. It's a good high time to finally take off that moniker of not having drafted a first round wide receiver since 2002. And now, unfortunately for Javon Walker, the amount of times that you will say his name are going to drop significantly, and he will probably be forgotten because while Javon Walker had a couple good games with the Packers, specifically the night when, after Brett Favre's father passed away, he was all over the field and then, but he will be soon forgotten, and it's best because he was a total draft bust. Let's hope Matthew Golden is not that same. Now we can move on to our second round pick, Anthony Belton, who has good arms and a long down defender. Can back down defenders. He excels against bigger pass rushers and is a really good power bunker. 6'6", 336 pounds. Now, the Packers haven't had a luck at with the big bodied offensive lineman, but it is certainly a strength. He can certainly back down defenders, and while I was shocked at his selection, um, I think he's one of those picks that are a big swing for the fences. Um, if you are the likes of Rasheed Walker, I would watch out. Now, I'm not saying Anthony Belton is going to outright take the job from Rasheed Walker, but man, he certainly looks the part. And as long as he can go through the preseason without committing a bunch of penalties, I'd consider Rasheed Walker on the endangered species list in terms of the Green Bay Packers. Now, some things he definitely has to work on is his foot placement. He doesn't have the best footwork. He kind of gets pushed around at times. Doesn't have the not really pushed around, but he doesn't have that side to side agility that you'd like to see in your blind side blockers. But he looks the part. He has the power. He can get in his stance really well, and I think he's going to be a long-term answer at the blind side tackle. Now, we'll see what happens with Josh Morgan or Jordan Morgan. He's certainly going to have his chances to compete for the left tackle's position, but I think ideally the Packers want to move Jordan Morgan inside in the interior guard position. So again, the likes of Sean Ryan and Rasheed Walker are, going to miss. Or Telfair, another offensive lineman for the Packers, is also going to have his opportunities to get that blind side tackle position. But again, it's never a bad thing to add offensive line depth. Packers always need them, and they always build up that offensive line well. When the Packers are good, they have the beef up front, and adding Anthony Belton will certainly add plenty of beef to that position. Now we go on to our third round selection, Savion Williams. Now, I mentioned Matthew Golden, how he just looks the part of a great receiver, high pointing the catch, great route runner, perfect soft hands that definitely dropped his drop capability over his time at Texas. But now we go to Savion Williams, who is kind of the opposite. Savion Williams is not a great route runner. He doesn't have the best hands, has the tendency to hold catches to his chest and double clutch catches as well. He's kind of the opposite. Also, he's a big 6'5" wide receiver with freak physical tools. He was used a lot as a gadget player at TCU, which limited his wide receiver development. So he'll certainly have his opportunities for sure. And with the likes of Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks in there as well, there's certainly going to be a lot of competition for those spaces. I think the likes of Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, not saying Savion Williams is going to be like a number 2 or number 1 wide receiver, but with the addition of Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, it's going to be a long way to determining where every wide receiver fits. I think long term, with the likes of with these 3 offensive selections that the Packers made in the first 3 rounds. The likes of Romeo Dobbs, Rasheed Walker, Sean Ryan may very well be playing their last season in Green Bay. Um, we have a new core coming in. Not the or Matthew Golden, Anthony Belton, and Savion Williams could all be busts. But long term, the Packers are going to be retooling that offensive line and or skill position, player position. So there's going to be plenty of competition in all aspects of the offense. And with a wizard like LaFleur on offense, he should be able to get a lot out of these guys. You just hope coaching wise, or Matt LaFleur does better this year. One more thing about Savion Williams is he's really fast. Has those tools that you want. He has the ability to develop. He's just going to have to develop. Like I said, the lack of hands is a concern. You really hope I'm not just mentioning his name because he's from TCU, but look what Quentin Johnson is. He is a good wide receiver in the NFL, but he has the ability to drop many passes. So with Savion Williams, he's going to have to develop that further. But as far as the first 3 picks, I think overall Packers have made some good selections. Now we go on to our 4th selection with Barron Sorrell, the defensive end out of Texas. Now, I mean, when he was introduced, he was like, I'm so glad, so proud to be here. And it's good to see. You like to see players that want to be there. You could almost tell when Barron Sorrell was mentioned, and the fact that he came from the green room and was introduced on stage, that the Packers really wanted him, which is good to see. The Packers found their guy on defensive end. Now, he is kind of a developmental piece. He certainly has freak athletic ability, 9.28 relative athletic score, which is really good for this draft class. Good agility, active hands, which is good to have as a defensive end. Flexible hips and be able to move side to side. But on the other hand, has kind of a shorter arms and a high pad level, which um, you know, limits his mobility against bigger offensive linemen. He struggles to set the edge sometimes. So when he's facing off against some of those better blindside blockers and or blocking tight ends, he might struggle a little bit. But I think he has a good motor, and also he doesn't have a lot of counter moves. So when he first moves his hands to or do like a spin or jostle the blindside blocker, if that doesn't move work, he doesn't have a lot left. He doesn't have a plan to further. So just trying to push the offensive lineman back, which saying that he's a little smaller and not having the higher pad level limits his ability to push up against the bigger, beefier offensive lineman. But I think that can certainly change. He'll probably need to add a little bit of mass, but that just comes with the territory. When you come to the NFL, it's a different game than the college game, to be honest. So certainly things to work on for him, but I really like where they got him. Um, I was when I was at the draft, there was a guy standing next to me, and he said, "I'd like to see Barron Sorrell go to the Green Bay Packers," and I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be really cool." And then, sure enough, his name gets picked, and I'm like, "Yeah, Barron Sorrell's Green Bay Packer," and now he gets to team up with his teammate Matthew Golden from Texas. So Packers all of a sudden have a feeling for the Texas schools, which is good. Not saying that the Georgia schools haven't produced good talent coming to the Packers, but it's nice to switch up the schools a little bit. Next, we have Colin Oliver, which I think he is a steal. I think he looks great. Yes, he's a little bit undersized as a pass rusher, but during his time at Oklahoma State, he was a big time performer. He did miss most of last year with a leg injury, but coming out as a freshman, 11 and a half sacks. He ended his career in Oklahoma State with 38 and a half tackles for a loss and a 22.5 sacks, which is really, really good considering he is a bit undersized. High motor, can tackle in space, burst right off the edge, which is really good to see. But like I said, and he's also a big game performer. He's performed big at Bedlam against teams like Oklahoma and others as well, and in the Big Ten championship game when Oklahoma State went there as well. Now, like I said, he's an undersized edge rusher. He relies on speed moves more than power moves, so that's something he will have to develop going into the NFL. But I think his high motor is something you just want as a coach. If there's one thing you want as a coach in the NFL, is a guy that goes, wants to keep getting better. You want those guys that are ready to learn. You want those guys that are ready to develop and go further. And I think he's a really good pick where they got him in the 5th round. Like I said, also he kind of struggles to disengage from blockers. Like I said, undersized, bigger guys he might struggle with. But when your player has a high motor, everything else can fall into place. The drive, the effort, the wanting to get better, that can't be taught. If you had that and everything else just needs to be improved, that can be worked on. So I think he's a really good pick. Um, like I said, lots of production in college. If he can translate any of that to the NFL, he's going to be a really good player. And he's probably going to be more of a rotational edge rusher for sure. But if he can develop those skills, if he can work on his sides, add some mass and stuff, I think he could be a really good second string edge rusher and maybe some spots in the first position, but we'll see. Well, he's more of a developmental piece, so things to work on, but so far he definitely looks the part of an edge rusher in today's NFL game, just a little bit on the undersized. Next, we end up with Warren Brinson out of Georgia. Again, he looks to be like a really nice piece as well, kind of a steal. Great athleticism, quick first step. He's a long defender as well. High motor and effort. Again, high motor and effort is what you want to see with your 6th round, 5th round picks. It means that, yes, they went and lower in the draft. They've waited for their name longer, but they're ready to get better and ready to get there. Now, he does lack in playing time. During his time at Georgia, because their defensive line is so deep, he didn't play as much. He's more of a rotational guy, but he looks the part for sure. Needs to work on his upper body strength, but again, can can happen if you just work on your math, develop, put on a little bit of weight, will go long term for them. Sometimes his ability to shed the offensive line, he gets beaten by double teams, which again, you work on some of your footwork, you add a little strength, that can be mitigated a little bit. And like I said, a lack of playing time, it is not the greatest pass rusher. Kind of limited in that aspect. More of a rush or run stopping guy than a pass stopping guy, but certainly things that can be worked on. Is a good guy. He's the kind of guy that Jeff Hadley likes to develop, and he's certainly a developmental piece, but he has the drive, he has the motor, and the length of a defense tackle, which you want a long defense tackle. He definitely looks the part there. Next, Micah Robinson. Now, it was really cool seeing Micah Robinson get announced by Tom Grassi, a fellow YouTuber, on the stage. Now, I was at the draft, so I didn't see it live TV, but I heard ESPN didn't show the pick, while other things too. I know ESPN doesn't really like YouTubers because YouTubers like Tom Grassi, not to put myself in that same category, but independent content creators that are trying to develop their research skills, develop their reporting skills, and just, show off their football knowledge. ESPN doesn't like that because they can't, or guys like people like us can't be controlled as well. And that's why he probably wasn't shown. But in terms of Micah Robinson, I honestly couldn't get a lot of information on him. He played at FCS Furman for 3 years, then played 1 year at Tulane. Kind of an undersized D-back. from all the things I've gathered is that he's probably a guy that was a bit of a reach. Probably could have gotten him on the free agent market, but has some short arms, but he has good speed. So that again, the good speed can be translated into better technique long term. But he's probably not going to make the team. More or less, he'll probably end up on the practice squad or be taken by somebody else. But my inclination based on him, just based on what I've read, which is not a lot because frankly it was really hard to come across for information, even on a lot of the advanced recruiting sites and the Bleacher Reports and other thing that do draft profiles. I couldn't get a lot of information on him, but he looks the part somewhat. But long term, don't think he starts for the Packers this year or even makes a practice squad. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Not saying that he doesn't have the skill there, but I just don't have a lot of information based on him. If anybody out there knows where I can find some good information, please let me know. I'd like to do a more deeper draft profile, which I just couldn't really find a lot of. Next, at our last pick of the draft, we have John Williams, a 2-year starter out of Cincinnati. Looks looks like a great offensive lineman. Another big swing type of guy at the end of the draft. Could be a potential draft day. Um, could make the roster, but probably again more likely it's more of a developmental piece that makes his way under the practice squad. But he's stout with good arm length and big hands, and being able to push. Guy is always good to have when you're an offensive lineman, sure. And that 3-year start or 2-year starting position, 24 starts over 2 years with Cincinnati is definitely good to look at. Plays long and understands how to weaponize his length, which again is good. You want long offensive linemen, and he's definitely that. And he's also an efficient zone blocker, which is, as we all know, is what the Packers mainly run. But negatives: high cut frame, and sometimes he loses steam. Um, like I said, the big hands. Once people get past the big hands, he starts to lose a little bit of steam. So that thing can be worked on. But again, it's kind of a high motor guy. Unreliable depth, spacing, and timing. Again, more of a developmental piece. But he probably could have gone higher. But it's good to when you have a guy that started a lot for his college team, was reliable, especially at a position need on the offensive line. Again, I don't think he's one of those guys. I don't think it's going to be threatening for a starting position this year, but he could be a good depth piece and more than likely a practice squad player. But that is the Green Bay Packers draft class of 2025. Um, Goody was even surprised at himself that he didn't make any trades, which again the Packers, ever since Goody has been with the Packers, he's made a draft day trade every year. So for him to keep all his picks, it's like he was confident in what he picked, and he's gonna need it. I'm not gonna say Goody is on the hot seat, but last couple of years draft classes have not turned out very well. And if this draft class doesn't turn out very well, again, 1 year is a lot to expect, but the likes of Matthew Golden, Anthony Belton, Savion Williams, and Barron don't work out or don't perform to where they were drafted, Goody could not be with the Packers anymore. More than likely, he's going to stand up and still be here for the next couple years, but he's on the hot seat. Matt LaFleur is on the hot seat. This was a big draft, and the Packers swung for the fences on a lot of picks. And if they can get it right, they could get back to their Super Bowl ways. And I really do think that this team can go to the Super Bowl. I know people are going to laugh at me for that, but if Jordan Love plays more like he did in his first year than his second year, with the addition of Matthew Golden and the likes of Savion Williams, along with the guys that they already have there, it's going to be a good year. Good year for the Packers because you already know what their defense did last year. It definitely got better as the year goes along, and if they can or plug in some of the guys they drafted this year, like um, Oliver and Barron, or even Brinson as well, um, the Packers could be in for a really good year. But let me know what you think. Otherwise, have a great day, and as always, God bless.